it's only recently, and it's only because of the internet. I think there's so much bad information out there because of the internet, and then people, they read this stuff and they think that this is, oh, okay, now I know how to sell my pilot, so this is what I'll do. And it's like, but that's not how it works, because you're just reading some idiot's, bad blog or whatever. You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Today we're talking about how do I sell my pilot. I hear that. That's probably the question I hear most often on my TikToks and my Instagram feed. How do I sell my pilot? Phil, what's the answer?
I think the answer is
It's complicated.
you have to know the right person, and then you got to meet with them. I think you have a coffee. You meet for coffee, and then
Pretty simple.
Or
right?
you valet, and then you just put it in cars, assuming one of them. Right?
Yeah, or you just give someone the bill. Here's my script, and you give them your forwarding out just where you want the money dropped off. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, just write your wire information there with your Swift ID.
Yeah. The problem with this question, as we joke around, is that to me the question lacks all humility. Like, how do I sell my pilot? Like, and how do I be a showrunner? It's like, but you don't even know what a showrunner does, because if you did know, you wouldn't want the job. Like, there's so much that the showrunner has to know how to do, and you only learn that from being on the job for years and years. Like, you learn that, it's like flying a plane. Well, don't you want your pilot to know how to fly a plane? To have flown planes before? Like, don't you need that? And so the same thing how do I sell my pilot? Well, like, you're getting ahead of yourself. I think that a better question it's like asking Tom Brady, how do I get a $100 million contract to play in the NFL? Well, like, the right answer would be, like, the right question is, well, how do I become a better high school football player? Or the best high school player they can be? And then after that, how do I become a really good college football player? And then how do I make it into the pros? And then once in the pros, how do I get to the highest level that I can play? And then ask Tom Brady how you get the $100 million contract. Like, you're not even playing high school football yet,
Right. And then his answer is going to be, don't eat tomatoes.
Yeah, he'll have something weird like that. Yeah.
Right, because they're too acidic and it messes up your alkaline balance in your body, and it causes your ability to recover to struggle. Yeah. That's the level he's playing at, though. He literally won't eat tomatoes because they're too acidic. Right.
And so,
and to your point, right, I think that it's important people understand when we're talking about, like, being a showrunner or selling a pilot, assuming you're going to be the showrunner. That's like saying, I want to be the CEO of a $50 million a year business.
Yeah, right. Well, why don't you learn how to, work in the mailroom first?
Yeah, right.
Right. There's just so much to know. And so, like, I think always the better question is, well, getting back to that Tom Brady, that football analogy, is like, if you ask him, well, how do I improve my foot speed? How do I improve my accuracy? And what are drills I can do to get better? Then the same thing goes with writing. How do I improve my storytelling? How do I make richer, fuller characters? How do I make my stories more engaging? And then once you have all that, how do you sell my pilot? Well, people are going to want it. It's, right now you're trying to sell something that people don't want because it's not good enough, and to be honest, going into writing a pilot, the goal really is not to sell your pilot. The goal is to have a great calling card so you can get work. And so it's like, you shouldn't be asking how do I write a great script so that I can sell, so I can get a calling card, so that I can get work, so that I can put myself in a position after a couple of years in the business where people want to buy my next pilot or my first pilot. And that honestly, and when I broke into the business, like, that was never my goal. My goal was never to have my own show. It was never to sell a pilot, because back then, this was, in the 80s and 90s, like, I didn't even know what a pilot was. My goal was to be a writer on Cheers, which was my favorite show. It was not to be the head writer or the boss. It was just to be in that situation. Mm-hmm. And so to do that, I studied writing. And then eventually, I broke in. I got a job on Just Shoot Me and whatever. I worked for a couple of years. Then I went to King of the Hill. I went to Just Shoot Me for 4 years and King of the Hill for 5 years. And at some point, halfway through King of the Hill, a couple of years into it, the studio asked me and my partner, hey, we want to buy your pilot. And we were like, well, we don't even have a pilot. And we'll come up with a pilot. Okay. That's how it works. And that's how we sold our pilot, because we were ready. And the studio wanted, they didn't even know, we didn't even have an idea they wanted it.
But when they looked at you, they saw dollar signs and they said, let's snatch these guys up now, because we can make money off of them.
Yeah, it was never to fulfill my childhood dream. It was because they saw dollar signs and they wanted to exploit me, and we're like, yeah, go ahead, exploit us.
So let's kind of back up a little bit, because I think this poses several questions. When you say it's a lack of humility, I think I agree with that. I don't think I would have agreed with that 4 years ago. I think I would have assumed like, oh, well, that's what you do, because I hear all these people selling their pilots, and that's ultimately what I want to do. So that's how do I get to the top of the mountain? Yeah,
and it could be, I could be using the word wrong. It could also be ignorance. Like, it doesn't mean that you're full of pride just because you don't know any better, but
But I think that I think does speak to the next question, which is, at what point did you see this being the question people were asking? Was it, at some point in the early 2000s,
Oh yeah, it was only, it's only recently, and it's only because of the internet. I think there's so much bad information out there because of the internet, and then people, they read this stuff and they think that this is, oh, okay, now I know how to sell my pilot, so this is what I'll do. And it's like, but that's not how it works, because you're just reading some idiot's, bad blog or whatever,
Right.
And it's also, I don't know, the internet's it's obviously it's a dangerous place because there's so much poor information, but that's just not how I would do it.
So I go back to, when I was first starting this in the early 2000s, and it's like, all right, so there's like 6 books I can buy at Barnes & Noble about screenwriting.
Yeah.
I'm going to read all of them, and then I'm going to quickly learn in internet forums that most of the people who are professional writers, the Craig Mazins and the John August and all those people who are putting out great content to help writers, it's like, okay, all of these rules I just learned that this thing must happen on this exact page count or I'm a failure as a writer is not actually accurate. And what really matters is that I'm telling a proper story that is engaging and keeps you involved.
Yeah.
Right? So with the internet, I could go build a blog and talk about screenwriting. And didn't you say that you found a TikToker teaching people how to write screenplays, and he's like 11?
Yeah, he's handing out screenwriting advice, and I was like, dude, this might not be the best guy to be listening to.
Right. So charlatans and snake oil salesmen exist, and they may do it with the best intentions, but as the saying is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, right. So just know who you're getting the information from, because there's that includes, I hate to say this, but it also includes some like some teachers who teach at like film schools or whatever, and like, but have they worked in the business? So what are they saying? Like, I remember even at King of the Hill, we were talking. Someone had a book on screenwriting. We passed it around, and I remember cracking it open. I was like, "Wait a minute, is this true? Is this right? Like, I haven't been doing any of this." And we all were just like laughing because it's like that's not how we approach story. We don't say, "Well, we have to have this happen by page 8." It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, your inciting incident has to happen by page 10. By page 3, we must have met all of your your real characters. By page 25, we should be entering Act 2. These are actual page counts from real books.
I guess, maybe. I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know.
Well, it goes back to what you told me.
It.
It's what you told me forever ago. It's like reverse engineering a story.
Right.
Like if I'm just looking at when did this thing happen, or reverse engineering it, and I think it was at some point in film school when I realized like that's not really a good gauge, because the script I have does not match what I'm seeing on television or what I'm seeing in film, because it's written in the room. You produce it. It changes during production, and then it changes again in editing, right? And ultimately, to your point, you cut it. You have to cut so that they can sell toilet paper ads, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a good benchmark of how the story was, how they developed the story and how they wrote it, because the process has changed multiple times. The thing you're looking at is not what they wrote.
Yeah. All right.
So that takes me back to the question then, what would you consider to be, and I know we've kind of harped on this in many podcasts about ultimately that this really comes down to his craft. Like Tom Brady is looking at himself as a quarterback as, I'm a quarterback and this is my career. This is my craft. This is what I do. And he's obsessed with it. Barring obsession, what would you say are the equivalent pieces in screenwriting to speed and accuracy and how to tackle or how to catch?
Well, I'll get there. As you're saying this, a thought popped into my mind was that a lot of times, I think you'll read on the internet, a story will come up, and someone will read it. Well, this unknown writer sold their pilot, and the pilot got on the air, and because like the reason why that's newsworthy is because it doesn't happen a lot, and it's a great story. And so because you read that and you go, oh well, that's how I can do it. If this person, I keep reading articles about writers who don't come out of nowhere, they get pilots. That's what I'll do. And so that's just not. Most pilots are not sold that way, and so that's why the internet can be a dangerous place. There's a lot of it's just not. It's almost disinformation. It's not how it's usually done.
So that's a good point. So my wife sent me a TikTok, and it basically kind of breaks down myths about overnight successes. And it's like, okay, Ariana Grande, she was on a TV show, but you back up, and it's like her parents are both super wealthy. She went to a very specific wealthy private school. She had a private theater in her home.
I didn't know that. Oh.
Right. Then you cut to her leaving her show, and she's working with the top vocalist in all of Los Angeles. She's doing that 100% of the time without having to have another job. And then she breaks through on the fact that she's wealthy, has fame, and is working with the best vocal coaches. Now, that's not to say the hard work and dedication she's putting in. I'm not trying to knock that. I'm also not trying to say that that's an excuse and you'll never make it, because I think a lot of people will hear that and say, well, I don't have millions of dollars, I'm not rich, so what's the point in trying? But I think that, to your point, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's a better story to say this is an overnight success than say, well, this person was grounded out for 10 years and then hit it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. People don't usually talk. Yeah. People don't usually talk. But so I'm sorry. I know I'm skipping. But so to answer your question, you want to know what were the things.
Yeah. What's the equivalent of those drills? Like if I'm going to approach this as like, okay, I'm a lineman. What are the things a lineman has to do? I need to be able to block. I need to be able to, run special teams. Like, what are those things? And so, what are my foot drills? What are my catching drills in case there's an interception? How do I tackle? How do I practice tackling?
In the beginning, when my partner and I were first writing, we watched whatever sitcom we were writing a spec of, and I watched it once to enjoy it, and the second time, and I still do this sometimes, I take a piece of paper and I write down all the plot points, especially the act break moments, so I can follow the A story, what's going on, and how many beats are there the A story, and how is it unfolding, how are they unpacking that information, what's that first act break, and do it again with the second and third act, and then you start seeing patterns and trends, and that's the studying part of learning, a story structure, and then, even little things like sometimes I post jokes on Instagram. What am I saying? On Twitter. I post on Twitter. I just whatever comes to mind. I practice joke writing that way. So I read a headline, and I like to be the first person or among the first persons to leave a comment. But I make a funny joke, and if I come up with an idea for a joke, I'll scroll through the comments and see if someone already made that joke, and if they do, I'm always embarrassed. I'm like, ooh, yikes! I almost made a very common, easy joke. I'm a professional comedy writer, and I almost posted an easy, obvious joke that everyone else was going to post. So I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a gem in just that comment. I almost posted an easy, obvious joke.
Yeah.
So I think this goes back to something you talk about all the time in your course, which is you need to have alternates, right? You need to have other jokes, and that's part of the practice of being a comedy writer.
Hi guys, it's Michael Jamin. I wanted to take a break from talking and talk just a little bit more. I think a lot of you people are getting bad advice on the internet. Many of you want to break into the industry as writers or directors or actors, and some of you are paying for this advice on the internet. It's just bad. And as a working TV writer and showrunner, this burns my butt. So my goal is to flush a lot of this bad stuff out of your head and replace it with stuff that's actually going to help you. So I post daily tips on social media. Go follow me at Michael Jamin Writer. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And let's be honest, if you don't have time, like just 2 minutes a day towards improving your craft, it's not going to happen. So go make it happen for you at Michael Jamin Writer. Okay, now back to my previous rant. On King of the Hill, I remember, On Just Shoot Me was a little different. That was our first job. On Just Shoot Me, you pitch a joke in the room and everyone would laugh, and that got in. Like whatever got the biggest laugh, that went in. On King of the Hill, there were so many writers, they would divide the writers' room into 3 groups. So it'd be 3 writers' rooms because there were like 20 writers, and each room had like 6 or so people. And I remember very early on, I got pushed into the joke room, which is fun. You don't really want to be in the joke room, though. You want to be in the story room because that's the prestigious one. The joke one is whatever. It's like, B-League. But it was more fun to be in the joke room. And so we're in the joke room, and we had an assignment to pitch a bunch of jokes. And so, whatever, someone suggested we had a setup line, and boom, I hit this first one right out of the park. Hit it right out of the park, man. Everyone laughed. Everyone roared in the room. So I'm like, okay, good. I'm going to run this over to the boss, the head writer, the showrunner. And I gave them the setup, and I pitched it to them, and they roared. They loved it. They loved it. Everyone who was in the room with them loved it. And I was like, this is gold. And they go, okay, good. Give me 5 more. I'm like, but why? Why? I just gave you the home run. What do you need more? We want 5 more. And I was pissed. And I was like, I was really angry at them. And I went back to the room. I was like, well, fuck those guys. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 more. And I got down to it, and I wrote my ass off. And I came up with a bunch of really other good jokes. They were all good. I don't remember which one we wound up using, but I came up with, but it pushed me. And I was like, okay, I did it out of spite, but I came up with a lot of other really good jokes. And because of that, I was like, all right, then it became less precious to me. I was like, okay, you want more jokes? I'll give you more jokes. That's fine. I'm happy.
It's almost like a coach, right? And going back to the sports metaphor, like a good coach is going to push you to your ability, not to what you think your ability is.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the best coaches I've ever had, I did not like. And then ultimately, when you learn, like, they're pushing you because they care. Like, if they didn't care, they'd just let you do whatever. Mm-hmm. And in this situation, right? Yeah, it's their show and they want the best show possible, but they pushed you, and you learned a valuable lesson from that.
Yeah. So you're right. You're right. That I can. Yeah. So you got always more jokes. There's always something else. Just, and then it became fun. A lot of times in the room, I remember later on I got a little cocky. So someone would pitch a bad joke, like a young writer, and rather than discourage them by saying, yeah, that's terrible, I would see if I could twist it to something usable. And then I'd say, see, we got your joke. That's your joke. And it was really maybe 75% mine, but it doesn't matter. That was how I was helping them. And
right, but then they're seeing, okay, I see where I went, and this is where we ended, and I can see how I got there now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the practice of craft. All right, so alternates is a good one. What else do you think of? Like, what are some other good drills or skill sets people should do?
If someone asks how do you write good dialogue, and of course, I was told this very early on, and maybe it's obvious, but you want to talk into one way to do is talk into a tape recorder, which doesn't exist anymore, but a digital recorder.
You got voice memos on your phone.
Voice memos. Play it back. Does it sound normal? Does it sound stilted? Does it sound like something a real person would say, or something that a comedy writer would write? And I posted on TikTok. It was interesting. I think I want to do a whole podcast about this, getting a whole episode on this. But I posted a joke that I wrote on King of the Hill years ago. I did King of the Hill because I figured, well, everyone knows that show. And then I said, okay, here's an alt that I had for it. Now go ahead, you pitch some alts. And everyone enjoyed it. Everyone started pitching alts on it. And some of them were really good.
There's some really good ones in there.
Yeah, some were very good, and some were not very good. And I thought I would talk maybe what I thought the good ones were and why. And some were good, but they were against story. So you couldn't use them. So even though they were funny, they would have hurt the story. So I thought we'd talk about that. But the whole process of people doing that, I think it was a really good exercise, and I'm going to do it again. And one of the reasons I thought it was good is because pitching a joke is very intimidating in a comedy room. And it was hard for me in the beginning. It was hard for a couple of years. And putting, even though these people were anonymous on TikTok or Instagram, on my page there, it's still hard to do that. It's still hard to put yourself out there and write and pitch something. And to everyone who did, I give them high props, because that was hard. And they put them, so even the ones who wrote bad jokes, good for you for putting yourself out there. Yeah,
man. I think we all as a human race appreciate people who take risks.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how the people who didn't, who are like, oh, we're too afraid. Well, it's not going to happen for you if you're not going to try. But the people who tried, even if they fell down, good. Okay, get back up. Let's try something else. And I'll do another post there if you want to follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer, because I will do another one in the future because people really like that. So I'll try to find something else to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. On your note about dialogue, one of the things that came up was like my own personal pet peeve of writers using writer lingo. Mm-hmm. Have you ever watched a show and seen a character say, "Wait a beat"?
Wait a beat. Oh no.
Okay.
No, but I have seen people say stuff like, "Copy that." Like that's an industry term. Copy that. And I'm like, I've never said that in real life.
You're talking to an Iraqi here, guys.
Yeah.
So the beat one kills me. It irks me so much because it's a beat. You're just saying time passes.
Yeah.
But I hear a character say that, and I cringe inside because I know that is just screenwriter lingo.
Yeah.
That screenwriter lingo that's leaking through your character, and it didn't get caught, and I just want to freak out inside. I freak out. I literally like have tantrums about it because it just feels so stilted and lazy to me to do it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm playing armchair quarterback here, right? Like I'm not doing this job, but it kills me.
Yeah, well, it's good. It shows progress that you're, you have awareness for that. Yeah.
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 Okay. Let me go through a couple of things that I was taught early on that were good things to do, and you tell me whether or not you think they're good drills.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, sit down every morning, open your newspaper, read headlines, and identify potential stories that you could tell.
It doesn't hurt at all. I used to do that years ago when I was taking creative writing. You'd look at an ad and you'd say, oh, you see a photo in a paper, in a magazine. You go, okay, write a story about that. So, okay, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a practice I've done in Sundance too, where they're like, okay, take 5 minutes and write a bullet point biography about the person who owns this truck. And they just show you a photo, or whose sunglasses these are. And it's like a pair of sunglasses just laying on a concrete asphalt. And you get some amazing work out of that, I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're less precious, to your point.
And also, again, you're not saying this has to turn into a movie. You're just saying this is an exercise to see how deep I can dive into a character and how rich I can make their backstory. And maybe at some point you will make a movie out of it, but you don't have to put that pressure on yourself now. This is just an exercise.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, I write down my idea, and then I think of 12 other versions of that idea.
I haven't done that. That sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It really is.
I remember, sometimes I follow a screenwriting teachers, and someone posted, some teacher wrote, if you're having trouble with your character, try flipping the story so that it's told from the other person's point of view. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I guess. It seems like there's other things I would do before I did that, but yeah, maybe. So
this to me is a tool that I feel works really well when I feel like I'm in a cliche. When I run into what's the house number, as you've called it.
Yeah, the house number as an example.
What are 12 other versions of that? And what it forces me to do is get through the tropes and get to something truly original.
Yeah,
so
right.
Dialogue, setting, interaction, that kind of thing.
Yeah, get rid of the bad ideas first, and now you're good. Now we got those out. Let's see what else we got.
Okay, got it. Daily practice of writing down one word and then writing a story from that one word.
Interesting. I don't see the benefit of that personally, but any kind of exercise that gets you working or writing, there's no harm.
Okay. Do you feel like you have to be constantly working on something new, or do you take time to work on small projects that are probably never going to be seen by anybody, but they really are just exercise?
To me, I'm doing that right now. I'm working on a side project that I hope someone will see, but it's really more my pet project. And even before we got on this podcast, I was working on it. And to me, so I have to do 2 things. The stuff, my professional work, is stuff that I want to sell to make money because that's how I make my living. And so that's not necessarily the stuff that's dearest to my heart, or it's really just what can I sell because I need to make money. And then there's the other stuff that really, my other writing, my writing is my profession, but my hobby is also writing. And my hobby is where I get the most fulfillment and enjoyment out of, because I'm just writing that for the art,
Awesome. Yeah, no, I respect that a lot. All right. So a couple other questions that I had here, because you talk about, to think about selling your pilot is the wrong approach. Really what we should be thinking about is, how do I write something so good that they can't ignore me? I think that's kind of, if we could trademark on Michael Jamin saying, I think that's it.
We should put that on coffee mugs. We should start selling merch.
There you go. We'll just get it sweet hats made that it runs all the way around the hat.
Yeah, with cheap ink, so it drips on your forehead when it rains, and then it's on your forehead.
Or you sweat. You get a sweaty fill, and it's just, love it. Love it. So in that world, one of the questions that I had, and this is something I remember right after my first PA job, I was asked by one of my professors to talk to the TV writing class. And I just kind of zoomed in, and one of the questions they asked was how many people have asked for your other writing? And I just remember thinking, no one's asked for any of my writing, right? And then the follow-up question was, well, how many other pieces of content do you have? right? So that's a question I've heard early on, is you never want to just have one thing. You want to have multiple things to show people.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you is, how many things is enough things?
There's never enough, because if you're looking for work, we're constantly updating our specs to have a new sample for animation, for broad animation, which would be like Family Guy, or some real animation, grounded, more like BoJack. So you'd want to have samples for everything, like whatever job opening there is, you want to have samples for that match the tone of that show you're trying to get on. Even recently, we were up for something, and it was animated, and my partner we're like, well, which one do we sell? And which one should we submit? Which sample of ours? We have so many samples. We were like, well, what's the one that's going to be closest in tone to the show that they already have, that's on the air, that they want to hire us for? And so that's that took us some thought, but we had plenty to choose from.
Got it. Okay, so what would you say is an appropriate pace to generate these samples? And this comes from a note, just to be specific. I remember I sent you something one time, and you're like, "Hey, man, this is good. It's just not great," which is like daggers, but also like the best feedback I ever got. And then you said, "Give yourself some time to work on this. Like, give yourself a month to write a spec." Do you feel it's like a month is an appropriate pace to do that? Do you feel like 12 samples in a year is a lot? Do you feel like it's normal?
I feel like that would be a lot, but I did TikTok and an Instagram about this a couple of days ago. Exactly this top topic, and it was because someone asked, how long does it take to write an episode of television? And so for a sitcom, it takes, and I guess this is not how I sell a pilot, but hopefully it's kind of interesting. For a sitcom, it takes about 3 to 5 days to break the story on the board. This is a team of writers, or professional writers, working in a room together to break the story, which means laying out the beats on the whiteboard. 3 to 5 days. Then one writer will go off and write an outline. They take a week to write an outline. They turn it back in, and we give notes on that. And then they go off to write a first draft. They can usually get between 1 and 2 weeks to write a first draft, depending on how their level and their experience level. Then they come back. Sometimes they'll write a second draft. That takes another week. And then from there, after that comes in, the writers on most shows, the writers will table it, meaning they all, as a group, take it apart, pitch on it, and put it together again so it feels homogenized, so that one episode doesn't feel like it's written by this writer and another one by a different writer. It feels like, okay, this is just another episode of my favorite TV show. And so when you think about that, it takes from idea to shooting script, you're talking about 5, sometimes 6 weeks and this is a team of writers working together, 5 to 6 weeks to make an episode of television, to shoot just before you're shooting it, just to make a script. And so you working alone without any help and without much experience under your belt, it's going to take, 2 to 3 to 4 times as long. It's going to take longer. So, because you don't have the benefit of the experience and help. So just know that, be kind to yourself, but make a deadline. Say, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 months to write this script, or 3 months. And I will, at the end of my 3 months, I'm going to be proud of my work. And if you're not, it's okay. Give yourself another month finish it until you are proud of it. You're going to have to redo it anyway. You're going to have to do rewrites.
There are so many good points in that, and I think one of those is like, be gracious with yourself and understand you are not a team of 6 professional writers writing this. You are a single person at home or in a coffee shop somewhere sitting at a keyboard hoping and praying that this thing is going to be good enough someone will hire you.
Yeah.
Right. So just be kind. And then number 2, it's not going to be perfect. Don't expect it to be. And then third, to your point, set your deadline and stick to your deadline, because that's what the job is deadlines. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You have a network schedule that you have to stick to.
Yeah. You can't make excuses. They don't accept excuses for the network. They want to see that script.
Man, I think that's really, really helpful. I've heard 6 months for a feature. That's, I think, the standard WGA contract, right?
Oh, I don't know. And I've sold a couple of features. I don't really remember how long they gave us.
I think you get 6 months to turn in a first draft for a feature.
Okay.
If you're hired on spec. But
okay.
Okay, awesome. And then types of features, types of products or samples to have in your belt. I know we've talked about this previously. The difference in the debate between specs and pilots. You like specs because they speak to the fact, can you match the tone of a show?
Yeah.
It seems like the industry really wants pilots. How do you feel about features as samples?
Not if I'm going to write a TV show. Not if you're trying to get hired on a TV show. I know some people. I bet you some people have been hired, especially in a drama, based on a feature they've done. I bet you that happens. It just seems for me, if I'm hiring for a sitcom, I don't want to read your feature. I want to read a half hour of television. I want to know what you can do in a half hour.
Also, the page count, I imagine, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing I do. When I read a script, I turn to that last page and I go, 52 pages? This could have been 46. and I'm telling you, it could have been.
Awesome.
Give me 46. Don't go to 52.
That's great. I think my pilot I just finished was 54, so I'll cut that down.
Oh, no, 54.
Yeah.
No.
It's first draft. I know things got to get cut. All right. The kind of the last thought I had when we were thinking about the subject, and you were talking about, getting better at football is just like getting better at writing. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of a principle that I wish I would have learned at a much younger age, and that is simply that there is a recipe to all of these things. And that doesn't mean necessarily by page count like we've talked about. But there is craft and there's ability to study. And so if you can consider, like, has someone done this before? Yes. Then you too can do it. Right?
Yeah.
And then secondly, all you have to do is mirror what that other person has done. And then the only difference, if you're doing it the exact same way, is the quality of the ingredients. And I would refer to that as your craft, right? Your skill set, your ability to turn a page. So in our last podcast, we talked about writer's block, and we talked about people who are struggling to come up with inspiration. And one of the thoughts that I had since we recorded that was, ultimately, it really comes down to your own expectations of yourself, right? The expectations you set on yourself are going to be the direct expectations that you get out of what you do, both bad and good. If I put expectations on myself to be perfect, I'm never going to get there. If I set expectations on myself to sit down and do the work and end with something that I can then rewrite, I am going to get the result that I'm looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that really stands out here. So
yeah,
awesome. Any other thoughts, Michael?
That's it. If I have any more thoughts, I'll save it for our next our next podcast episode coming soon. Right?
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Michael.
Everyone, thank you.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. If you're looking to support yourself, I'd encourage you to consider investing in Michael's screenwriting course at michaeljamin.com/course. I've known Michael for over a decade, and in the past 7 years, I've begged him to put something together. During the global COVID-19 pandemic, Michael had time, and I have to say, I wish I'd had this course 10 years ago. As someone who's personally invested in most online courses, earned a bachelor's degree, and actively studied screenwriting for over a decade, this course has been more valuable to me than most of the effort I've put in because it focuses on something no one else teaches: story. In his course, Michael pulls back the curtain and shows you exactly what the pros do in a writer's room, and that knowledge has made all the difference for me, and I know it will for you too. You can find more information at michaeljamin.com/course. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at michaeljaminwriter. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.